Hi,
Hi,
I think we're live.
we're live. I hope so.
It's great to see you, Jaisal. Thanks for joining me. How are you?
As- I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, it's great. It's so nice to get to kind of talk to these people through these conversations and makes me less lonely. So I appreciate it.
During this very separated, or what feels like a very separated time.
Yeah, it feels simultaneously completely isolating and completely connected because I think, wow, most people are having a similar experience. Not everyone, I realize, but a lot of people are having this experience. It's funny because I actually work from home when I'm not traveling and teaching. So it's like I'm really, and I'm a homebody. I'm an introvert. So for me, it's like I'm comfortable in my house. But
You hit
no,
the
it's
nail on the head with me too.
what?
You hit the nail on the head. That's me
Oh yeah,
too. And then there's this meme I saw that I think Janessa, I think some of us might know Janessa Modestin posted,
yeah.
and it said, "When you find out your daily lifestyle is called quarantine or something."
I know. Well, my I have an 18-year-old son who's really into video games and all kinds of computer stuff, and I'm like, he's been preparing this for this for his whole life. Like this is like his, you know, it's his happy place to like be in his room on his computer. He has friends all over the world already. Like he's been doing this for such a long time. He has an amazing network, and he's so happy up there talking, using all the Wi-Fi. So hopefully we'll stay connected today because he won't get on. I asked him.
Okay, that's
Um,
great.
but how are you? How are you feeling like with all this personally?
Like that.
Yeah.
Personally, it's been a trip. I think it's affecting everybody in different ways. It's certainly affecting me in different ways. Um, it Isolation, like I said, my element is isolation, but that's not necessarily a good thing in that, when
Yeah.
you like feed into the part of you that wants to be a homebody all the time, it's actually good when you have people in your life who are constantly like, we need to get out of the house and we need to do things. And then that element is just gone. It's not necessarily
Yeah.
great. It feels like imbalanced because I don't at least have that anymore.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, it's not like now I'm just like leaning into my tendencies rather than
Right.
living a more balanced life.
Yeah. I mean, we all need to be right now. I think that's the safest thing. Unless we really need to be out, that's the way to protect everyone
Right.
is by distancing. But let's get into it. Are you going to start us off with a mantra, like some
Yes,
kind of
I would love
welcome?
if you could start with Om Sahana Bhavantu. I will read the transliteration that I have in front of me first because I like for people to know what the mantra is about. And then if you're at home, you can go ahead and join us in the chant. So the transliteration is Om, may we all be protected. May we all be nourished. May we work together with great energy. May our intellect be sharpened. May our study be effective. Let there be no animosity amongst us. Om, peace in me, peace in nature, peace in divine forces. So I wanted to chant it, but I don't know if Jivana has dropped off and if we're still live, but I will go ahead
Yeah, I'm
and
still here.
hope.
Can you hear
Oh,
me?
you're still here. Yeah, I see you. Your face is just
I
blurred.
think it's your internet actually. I'm not sure. It could be mine. But what'll happen is if we have not great bandwidth, the video will go away, but the sound still goes on, I think. So,
Okay. So hopefully everybody can still hear me. If you're at home and you'd like to join along, or just receive the vibration of the mantra, maybe you can sit in a comfortable seat, maybe upright if that feels good to you. I'm going to sit a little bit upright. I'm going to place my palms on my hands, but you can do what you feel energetically is best for you. And let's take a collective deep breath in and exhale, let it go. Om Sahana Bhavatu. Sahano Bhunaktu. सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनादितमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः And if your eyes are closed like mine, I can gently flutter them open.
Thanks. I love that mantra. I used to do that every day at Integral Yoga. Yeah, I think maybe it's my internet that's not great. I think my son might be online. But like I said, I think it just means my video will drop away and I'm still here. So I think we can keep going.
Okay.
So thanks for that, and also for coming up with this idea with me. I think this is exactly what I need personally. So I have teachings that are definitely coming up for me these days, and I imagine you do too. And I don't know if you want to, can I ask you to start and think of maybe, or talk about a few yogic teachings that are present for you right now?
Absolutely. And we can reference the one in which you saw me post about, right, and contacted me.
Oh yeah.
Which was
I forgot. Let's talk about the lemons. I love that.
The lemons, right?
That's what started us.
Yes, I made this video about lemons, and I noticed that in the grocery store, people are hoarding all sorts of foods, and all sorts of amenities and all sorts of necessities, and lemons being one of the things. So I, typically go to the grocery store every week and I buy, like 1 or 2 lemons for the week. And they weren't available. And what I realized is people were hoarding them because of the vitamin C content, likely, and to boost up the immunity. And just like a little known fact about lemons is that the vitamin C content, so much of it is in the skins of the lemon. But we often don't use it. We often are kind of wasteful, many of us, right? And we kind of just take the juice and throw out the peel. And we don't really remember that actually, if we take the time to wash the lemon properly, to peel it, and then to boil the skin, like there's a lot of vitamin C content we can gain. And so to me, that was just a very practical idea of how to practice aparigraha, or non-hoarding. And so that we're not consuming more than we need, but actually we're just using as much of something as we have. And then Jivana saw that video and contacted me. It was like, aparigraha, yes.
I loved it. I thought it was such a practical example of that, of something that we should be doing anyway, all the time. But this whole crisis has really brought it to our attention. I think so many of us are spoiled with abundance, and especially in the US, we have like grocery stores, like we're used to stores just being overflowing with food. And then like this morning I went in to the grocery store, which I can talk about more later because it was kind of traumatic, but like half of the shelves are bare. And I think that's something that throughout history we've dealt with before. And I know many other cultures are dealing with that all the time, like food scarcity. But like I've just, I feel like I've been so lucky in that I've always had so much. And yet I'm conscious of that too, because of yoga, and aparigraha. In fact, I remember when you showed us how to make lemon tea, it reminded me of my first yoga teacher, Kazuko Onodera, who she was Japanese American, and she had grown up actually living in a concentration camp in California when they interned, is that the word? Interned the Japanese during World War II, right at the end. They were like, it was unbelievable. And that's when she was a small child and they had nothing. And so she was very careful when she was always cooking. She would talk about, really like making sure that you like didn't waste anything. And she would always make fresh ginger tea also, by the way, which is what you were kind of referring to. Like you could make fresh ginger tea by slicing taking a few slices of ginger, boiling them. And you could also have lemon peel or do that separately, which I thought was really nice.
Absolutely. It was great. And then as we were, as you had brought that up, then the next few days in my kitchen, I had thought of more things like that. I hadn't shared them yet, but
Yeah.
it's just like little things like that, sometimes I do them most of the time, but then sometimes when we, like you said, we have an abundance, we tend to be a little bit more wasteful. And in this time, it was like a good reminder, like, let's not be as wasteful. So things like spring onions, if you just put them in water by a windowsill, they'll continue to grow. So you don't actually need to cut off the roots. Like if the roots are there, don't cut them off. Just let them keep growing for a while, and you get more out of them. So you don't need to go back and buy more. And then also the roots are edible, so we don't need to throw the roots away just because they kind of look a little weird. We can just wash them really well. And
I think
we
should just do a cooking show.
Cooking show, yeah. There were so many other little things. Like I was out before like the quarantine was really becoming like a thing. A couple of weeks ago, I was out to dinner with friends, and somebody had served us in a salad like these roasted vegetables, and the carrots had the tops. And somebody said, "Oh, can you even eat those?" And I was like, "Yeah, the carrot tops are delicious. Of course you can eat them." Like, I think you just have to be aware of like not overeating carrot tops and making that like you're eating them every day. But yeah, you can like turn them into pesto, or you could just eat them as they are. So.
Well, like beet greens too. Like they're not usually my favorite, but like we got beets last week, and I was like, we're eating those greens. Like,
yeah,
that's food.
I sometimes buy the vegetables with the greens so that we can eat both. You know what I mean? But like generally, we think of them as waste. And I know this is not new. Like this issue has been around for a while. I think even like there are chefs out there that are trying to incorporate more of the waste products into the dishes that they create. But this is this time was like a good reminder to be a little bit more.
It's funny because with Aparigraha, I whenever I teach about it, I'm always talking about it as more like internal and not hoarding like attention or it's usually not so practical like it is right now. And I feel like that's actually probably what it really was about, is just simply like sharing, taking only what you need, like not being wasteful. Like those are such, like I feel like this kind of situation really gets you back to like basic human issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we were just saying that the conversation we had sort of had offline was like, well, what else can we apply in a really practical and tangible way, right? In this time of change, of transition, of uncertainty, as we've named this little talk or whatever.
Yeah. So what else is on your mind?
So many things. One of the things that was on my mind was just some random things from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika that I thought I'd bring up. And I just want to read a passage. And these are all from the first chapter, because it talks, the first chapter talks about like set up, how to like set up your practice. And so I wrote down a quote. The yogi or yogini should practice Hatha Yoga in a small room situated in a solitary place, being 4 cubits square and free from stones, fire, water, disturbances of all kinds, and in a country where justice is properly administered, where good people live and food can be obtained easily and plentifully. And so I thought, wow, there's a lot to think about there, right? But so it's basically like we're in the conditions, like maybe not.
Well, no, the justice, that justice piece, forget it.
That's the part that jumps out, right?
Forget it. We're doomed. Like we cannot practice yoga in America.
I know. So, I mean, but just the idea, the reference to it being in a small solitary place, I'm like, that's kind of where we're at right now. We're in a small solitary place.
Yeah.
And so then how do we do the other parts? Like maybe not literally, but for our time. So disturbances of all kinds. And then the social, in a country where it says justice is properly administered, where good people live. So how can we be a part of that? How can we be a part of where good people live, where justice is administered? That's the collective.
That's two different things,
Yeah.
I think we have lots of good people. I know that. I feel like the goodness of people is really coming out, but the justice part, I just feel that's a political thing, that's
and
not
politics in this time of uncertainty really does matter. And I know you had some conversations around this already with some of your other guests.
Yeah.
right? But just to
Yeah.
reemphasize that in times of uncertainty, the politics is always going to dictate who gets the amenities, who gets the resources, who gets the necessities, who gets the help that they need. And it's going to probably be distributed in an unequal way. So how can we be a part of making sure the distribution is happening equally?
Yeah, I mean, it's really been shocking but actually it's been also really amazing to see that people are talking about it right away. Like, oh wait, well, how come so and so is getting tested? How come that whole professional basketball team is getting tested? They're not even sick. And then people who are sick aren't getting tested. Like, at least there's a conversation happening. You know, I have to say, like, I keep thinking back to the AIDS epidemic that I mean, I was living through in the 80s and 90s. And I've also seen people say, oh, we shouldn't compare them, but I think we need to compare and to really look at what's different and what's the same. And one of the things that's really different is that people are talking, like we're all talking about it. And this issue of inequity has come up. I've seen it in the news, which is like remarkable to see that conversation happening, because that's an issue. That's a conversation that we need to be having anyway.
Yeah, and I think that some of what I've seen, and you know, it's like everything is always like in extremes. Like some people in one corner are having these conversations more than ever, but I think for some of us who maybe are like experiencing inconvenience or experiencing change in a time where, you know, like our focus is being shifted away from those conversations. So to not let the focus get shifted away just because like maybe you're dealing with a different household situation or you're dealing with like anxiety or over not being able to go, and I don't mean clinical anxiety, I just mean like as an emotion of not being able to go out and do your normal life. And
yeah, I mean, I posted on Facebook this morning, like which fear will win today? The fear of
not being able to get food,
yeah,
or not being able to go to the grocery
exactly.
store. Yeah,
I forgot what I wrote, but yeah, that was
or
it.
going to the grocery store and getting germs or whatever.
I was like, because I went to the store this morning, I was like, oh my God, I have to go into the store. Like I didn't want to go, and then I thought, oh, but then not having enough food is scary too. So it's really interesting. And I knew, like, I shared that because I think I do have tools to help myself. I still have lots of anxiety, but first of all, I mean, this is just a comment for our yoga teachers to say, like, it's okay to be human. Like, we don't have to be perfect all the time. And like, I feel really concerned that sometimes people look at yoga teachers and think, oh, you have your act together, when we don't.
We don't.
Like, I don't. I mean, yeah. So sure, we have these teachings, and maybe we should look at what they are again. But like when I'm dealing with fear, I do have things I can do. What would you suggest?
So many things. I think one of the overarching themes in my life has just been centering joy. You know what I mean? Like centering our physical needs, our emotional needs, our mental needs, like all of those things, and not letting them be afterthoughts. And so like in our changing routines, like so many of our routines have changed. How can we put our needs first, and how can we be honest? I think it comes down to honesty, which is also one of those like yamas and niyamas, right? Satya, which is like truthfulness can be it can be a tricky situation because there is no one truth. We have to realize that there's many sides to truth, but also we are in that, what is our personal truth? What is our personal needs? And can we not deny it? Because often it's in the denying that things go downhill. Like when we're like, I know I'll be fine. I'm fine. We hear that all the time, right? How are you doing? I'm fine. But really, are you fine? And like, can we sit and then really listen to, no, what is it that I need in this moment to make me feel whole so that I can move through this with integrity and then be available to other people who need me.
So
and not then ignore those conversations.
You're saying Satya as an internal practice for our own truth, like being able, Satya as a tool to get in touch with what we're really feeling rather than like putting on a good face or putting on a show.
Absolutely.
Like not just authenticity, but actually inner awareness. I hadn't thought of Satya as like inner knowing. and reflection. It's like reminds me of those teachings, like Svadhyaya, of like reflecting on who you are. That's a truth practice. Like being
Absolutely.
honest with yourself. But what I was going to talk about around my fear was Santosha. I think it's related to what you were saying, actually. Just like trying to look at what do I have? What can I feel content about right now? Like, what can I can
Hmm.
appreciate the fact that I'm so far I don't have this virus. Like, I'm relatively healthy. I feel safe. I have money to buy food. Like, I have so much. I have so much privilege, and that I can not feel it's not enough, but it can help reduce my fear that I am okay right now. In fact, I had this experience. I was just writing about it actually yesterday. Um, when I woke up, you know how when you wake up, like your first thought is, it's so interesting, like how you can go from asleep, unconsciousness to awareness. And my first thought was, oh my God, like the world's totally changed. Like this is a nightmare.
Hmm.
And it was like it was more than a thought. It was like this feeling came over me of like dread that came over.
Hmm.
But it passed pretty fast. And then like just after that, I realized, but right now when I'm on it, I think it was honesty. I was thinking about it as santosha, contentment, but really it's more like honesty, like you said. I realized, right now I am safe, and I felt safe in my bed. It was like warm and I was comfortable. And that was such an
Hmm.
amazing experience to actually be warm and comfortable. And I was like, wait, so right now I'm physically safe and I'm not in danger and I can relax. And it was just such a contrast to experience those two things like within like seconds of each other, to go from that like dread to this feeling of, oh wait, I'm okay. Anyway, that was it.
Absolutely. No, I think that's such a common experience. I should say yes, that's such a common experience, not no. But I think there's a reason why the yamas and yamas are in like one breath. Basically, we say them because they all kind of have to be practiced together. It is truthfulness, it is contentment, it is, in the next breath, non-hoarding, non-gripping to our circumstances. And I think so much of this is like that, the non-gripping of the not just the goods but also the experience that we're used to having. So how can we like try to reimagine what our new experience and our new existence is? And I think for so many of us, we're waiting for that moment of when will life go back to the way it was. And I think that's like contradictory to hopefully the experiences that we're having, that life won't go back, life will move forward.
Hmm.
There is no return to before. There is a moving forward with new knowledge and new experience and just new context
Right.
of the
Right.
world, right?
It'll be different, but probably okay. I mean, some things will be worse. Some people will have definitely more suffering, and that's bad, and we need to help them. But for other
Mm-hmm.
people, it'll probably be okay. And I think, um, I mean, I'm very concerned about that. I'm very concerned about going back to the normal, and yet a lot of people won't have that normal. But going back to the niyamas, I just want to say, for me, like, I like to think of how Patanjali, at least in the sutras, he had the yamas and then he offers Pratipaksha Bhavana. So whenever I teach about it, I always think about how he inserted Pratipaksha Bhavana right there before he presents the niyamas, and that he's like, Pratipaksha Bhavana is positive thinking for people who don't know. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of
Mm-hmm.
giving you these yamas, like here are these things to not do, to really hold, like to hold to, and then
Yeah.
use positive thinking. And then here's the niyamas, which are more like active things you can do, like things you should
Yeah.
practice. So I like, for me, like the niyamas become guiding lights in my life, like trying to, like we are saying, like santosha, trying to connect for me to like what is okay, what it feels, where am I content. And I was thinking about the others too, like tapas.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that happening right
Yeah.
now.
Yes. But even in that, like setting yourself up for discipline so that you can get what you need to get done. Again, I would say for me, it's like centering joy. So making sure that like right at the top of my day, I have something that helps me feel centered, helps me feel good, it helps me appreciate. what I have, right? All of it, whatever the joy practice looks like, whether it's a visualization, whether it's dancing, whether it's art, whether it's whatever creative outlet, whether it's movement, if it is the asana, you know what I mean? If it is the pranayama, any of those practices are part of that centering of joy. And so for me, it's been this reorientation, or maybe not even, it shouldn't have been a reorientation, but maybe it's like this moment, right? It really
Yeah.
shouldn't have been, but it's like a reminder. It's like, oh, we're in this different time. How can I recenter? And it's like, oh yeah, let me prioritize. Let me reprioritize and make sure that the thing that's fallen off comes back to the beginning and not the end. It doesn't get pushed out.
Right.
And how can I wake up and be present? And how can I be present with myself and be present with those now who are in the space that I'm not used to being in the space with as
Yeah.
much.
I mean, that sutra on Santosha is always so powerful for me because it's something like by contentment, supreme joy is gained. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it speaks to like that yoga is about changing our thinking
Yeah.
from kind of the outward focus thinking of joy, like ego mind thinking, oh, joy comes through attachment, getting things, making money, getting the job, having the relationship that we're trained in at least through capitalism, especially to like seek outwardly for fulfillment. And yoga is the opposite. Yoga is this inward focus. So Santosha is teaching us by contentment, supreme joy is gained. Like that to me is a really hugely powerful statement that supreme joy actually comes through being happy with what you have. Like it almost doesn't flow logically from the way we're trained through culture, right?
Absolutely. And in this time, I'll say like it's manifested in two different emotions, and I can in two very different experiences. That like, and I'll say to my own, I'm now in a house full of people that I'm usually not in a house full with. At my in-laws' house. I've
Mm,
gotten out of New York City to like reduce the risk, and for us, reduce the risk of then passing it on to them through like visitation or whatever. So we're
mm,
like, let's just stay here.
yeah.
And for us, like we were the other just yesterday we were like, oh, we're bored, like haven't been bored in a while. And I understand that's also a privileged feeling, but even in that sense of like, I'm not used to this. I'm not used to this, like being able to be with all these people, but also not having anything concrete to do. So we had to like come up with like, oh, something to do, which actually made us be more present in the moment and with each other
Mm,
rather than being in our devices, et cetera, et cetera. And then like the opposite experience is loneliness, right? People who are at home maybe by themselves and aren't adjusting to new circumstances and with other people, but adjusting to new circumstances of having to be alone all the time now. Um,
yeah.
and in that way, like we're doing is like taking advantage of the digital landscape to now interact in ways that we haven't before. And I saw you posted too that it was your partner's birthday.
Yeah.
Yes. And you were crowdsourcing ideas because again,
I know.
how do you celebrate in a way that you can't have a
Yeah.
physical gathering in community? So what did you end up doing? I'm curious.
That was awesome, by the way. Like I just want to say, like the creativity that I'm seeing and the connection and community building is amazing. Um, we did a bunch of stuff like that normally I wouldn't have thought was such a big deal, but like we went on a long walk and that was like the highlight of our day. Well, actually, the highlight was we had a Zoom surprise party with our extended family, and so like people were just on the screen and we all sang happy birthday to him, and that was amazing.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
I was gonna make him a cake, but he was really bored and he's a really good baker, so I was like,
He
let's
made
make
his own cake.
yeah. I like assisted him in making his cake because like he's so much better at it. So I was like, okay. And it was fun. We actually did it together. So like that was actually more enjoyable. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's funny, like I've always thought about that when you're preparing a party for someone, there's so much joy in the preparation and they don't get to experience that. They just have to
Partake
sit
in
there and
that.
wait and be the receiver. So that really taught me a lot also about like um, engagement and how like doing is fun, like building something, creating something. There's so much joy in that experience. So where does that in yoga teaching? So help me. Let's go back to like I want to think of specific teachings that we can share with people. I mean, I
So
could go on, but your turn. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think a lot of it again is like what you said with contentment, like just I think it's about contentment and being present. And I think that's like meditation and just concentration on the on your surroundings. And so being present allows us these opportunities to
Hmm.
be actually in their circumstances and try instead of trying to distract or run away with these like, the cliches of trying that are always trying to get to us. You can think of it like that, right? So for us, it's instead of like turning away from the circumstances we've been given, how can we lean into the circumstances we've been given
Mm.
and use them to be more present? And I think
Mm.
that again feeds into this idea of contentment. And I think a lot of us are dealing with more challenging things than just what the physical environment is. We're dealing with like financial loss and all of those things, but I in the same way I was thinking as you, like I had that moment of when this started happening of overwhelm of financial loss of like, oh no, I'm gonna lose
Yeah.
this thing, I'm gonna lose this thing, like what am I gonna do? And then I had that moment of, well, and this is kind of, I guess it is by comparison, we shouldn't be comparing, but I did have that moment of comparison of like, what about those people that don't have a job where they can offer things online? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And we can still create online offerings, but like, what about the drivers? What about the massage therapists? Like, they're not necessarily have something where that can be translated
Yeah.
online as easily as teaching a yoga class.
Well, I
And so
think
that,
of it like as tapas. Like, should we talk about that? Because I feel like that's
yes,
such a hard concept to teach about. It can be so, what's the word? Like spiritual bypassing. Like to say
mm-hmm,
tapas, oh, suffering is good for you. Like that's just such a lame um, definition because we don't have the right to tell anyone that their suffering is good for them. Um, I don't know if you have thoughts about that.
oh yeah, I definitely don't think that that's a good thing to be telling people because um, it goes back to that injustice, like where justice is being administered, and
Uh-huh.
even though we're feeling uncomfortable, and I think it's like that. If you're in the school of non-duality, you have to hold two truths simultaneously, and one is like your own discomfort and your own needs, and then you
That's
also have
it.
to hold the truth of other people's discomfort and their needs, and how do we take that forward? So both of those truths, how can I hold myself and hold others hand in hand as we move forward?
That's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree. Sometimes I say that it's an internal practice that you can't tell other people to do. Like they may be doing it or not. Like that these teachings are offered as internal work for us, not
Mm-hmm.
not to really use to examine the world. So it's about examining yourself. So like tapas is about how can I learn about myself through what I'm experiencing? How can I gain wisdom from experiences in life, especially suffering? And also, and like if you look at the that chapter 2 in the sutras, like Patanjali is talking about how to avoid future suffering. So he's basically giving us a guide to like how to live without future suffering. And mostly he talks about it. The part that I love, he talks about viveka or discriminative discernment, which I was talking about, I think, another day last week. I'm kind of
It
obsessed
always
with that.
comes back to it. Yeah.
It does. And I feel like no one talks about that. Like in
Mm-hmm.
yoga land, we don't talk about clear seeing, clear vision as the goal of yoga. It's actually not, Patanjali literally offers the 8 limbs. Oh, I said this last week with Carrie Kelly, I think, but I am obsessed with this, that the 8 limbs of yoga are offered as a way of cultivating discriminative discernment, of clear seeing. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
To
that's what,
remove it, avidya, right? To remove ignorance.
yes, exactly. To
Yes.
remove ignorance, avidya. Thank you. And
And to
suffering.
like, right. Mm-hmm.
And that's
And
actually the
to
cause of the
recognize
suffering,
Maya.
right?
Right. And to
Right, yeah,
recognize Maya, that
right,
illusion that we are separate when really we're all connected, right?
right. The cause of suffering is that we've identified with it, with the physical. We've
Mm-hmm.
identified with this body, with this mind so much that that's where the suffering is coming from. But if you begin to see clearly, a clear vision allows you to see what is real, what is unreal. And that's what yoga is for, though. At least in Patanjali Sutras, he's saying the 8 limbs then are to prepare you for that, to help your mind see more
Mm-hmm.
clearly. That seems especially important right now. It's such an emotional time.
And it goes back to, again, to accept reality as it is instead of trying to tell ourselves a different story about reality or to deny, to avoid it, right? It's always like that avoidance or clinging. Those are like especially in the Buddhist teachings, but it's also in the yoga teachings
Yeah.
of avoidance and clinging. And so how do we kind of keep on
Yeah.
managing those two
Right.
tendencies
Two more
over and
places, two
over
other
again?
places, because you have attachment and aversion,
Yeah,
right? It's
exactly.
ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and clinging to
Yep,
life. Those are the five.
exactly.
And attachment, aversion, I always think like aversion is even more powerful of an obstacle for us than attachment. Like attachment is a big
Mm-hmm.
deal, like we're craving stuff, but like think of what we don't want to have happen. Like right now, I feel like there's so much aversion to like this virus. Like I can't, it's like taking over my brain. You know, this idea of like, wait, did I touch it? Do I have it on me? Like it's just this kind of crazy. It can feel a little overwhelming.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in that way, like I'll say one of the lessons I've really learned in the last year is to talk it out over and over again, but not just like in a repetitive, like complainy way. Like I think that's the beginning of the conversation is maybe like getting out the feelings, not to deny the feelings, but to have the conversation about the feelings and then at some point move on, like away from the feelings and towards action, towards like, what do I do about the feelings?
Mm.
Right? How do I turn this into a tapas? How do I turn this into discipline? How do I turn this into contentment? How do I turn this into action?
Mm.
And and it's interesting because in this time, like I think the Gita is very, very relevant, like in action and inaction, and how those two things are related. And like
Yeah.
for us who are self quarantined or shelter in place, there is action in inaction, right? The inaction of staying home is actually the action of protecting
That's
others,
awesome. I
right?
love that. Oh my God, I
Versus
love that.
right, and then versus the other way around, like acting. How does acting then become contradictory? So like in all of those two concepts that are seemingly different, like seemingly opposites, how they actually there's also overlap. Um, and so for us, how do we move through emotion into turning it into positive action? How do we move through it into turning it
Mm.
into an outcome, a desirable positive outcome, like we talked about? And then one of the ways I'll say, and this is going to be controversial, so I'm just going to put that up front, and I'll word
That's what
it in
I
a
love
way.
about you. I just want to say, like, thank
Okay.
you.
I'm gonna word it in the way that I found online because I felt like this wording left room for everybody. So even what I'm saying is gonna be a little bit controversial. And I don't even actually the word is astika, right? Astika meaning faith in something. And like there's a lot of religions that are nastika, they don't have like Buddhism would be like Gnostic, right? So because they don't have like a God, they don't focus on God. But in the way that it's worded, it's a faith in self, real self, meaning like through Jnana Yoga or Raja Yoga, finding that like true self, belief in God being one way bhakti, and then belief in it says conviction in scripture. So in this, like in the case of yoga, maybe Vedas, but it could be
Mm.
non-Vedic as well. So belief in scripture. So having something that, and hopefully for yoga practitioners, right, there's yoga scriptures that we can turn to and then have as we're discussing them, but like really having faith that there is something there is something guiding us towards peace, right? That is, again, if we look at like the ultimate goal is expressed in many different words, one of the words we can
Yeah.
use is peace, inner peace, even, but inner and outer peace. So how can we have faith that that through all of following the guidelines of what's laid out in yoga and all of these different concepts, that we will find inner peace. That inner peace is there for the taking.
How is that
It's only
controversial?
I think it can, because the word faith, I think some people have a
Oh,
problem with the word faith because they just assume that that means God and whether or not you believe in God, and that's the whole thing. So
I see.
I don't. I just want to be
I love the
conscious.
word faith, and I think and the word God, and I think it's okay. I like to think of reclaiming terms like that, because yoga offers them in a non-religious context, which is more
Mm-hmm.
powerful. It makes it more available to people. It equalizes it. It takes it away from some religions that use these terms to control people. And
Yeah.
it re-empowers us, those that don't follow those religions, to be able to find our own spiritual truths. So I like it. Oh, sorry, I just hit my table. But yeah,
But
I
even
love
the word
it.
even the
Awesome.
word astikya, right?
Uh-huh.
Astik can be like a very controversial word. So just to like
Yeah.
put that out there,
Yeah, no,
that,
I understand.
you know, just a belief, I think, that can help guide us, and it doesn't have to be religious or to any one doctrine. Just faith that like there is peace for the taking, but we have to work. We'd have to do the work to do it, to get it,
And
right?
like,
It doesn't
you know
just
the
come
other
to
word,
us.
Shraddha? Uh,
Knowledge. Yeah.
Shraddha, I thought was,
I thought it was knowledge.
what am I thinking of? There's another word for faith. Anyway, I can't think of what it is. But yeah, I mean, I love that
Okay.
idea. I think you touched on a lot right there. I mean, you're talking about faith through clear vision, like I was saying
Mm-hmm.
before, right? Like jnana yoga. And then
Mm-hmm.
through bhakti, where it's just like practicing that, making that connection. Seems like so. So, are you suggesting that we focus on that right now? That we look at how to like use
Find faith in our life,
find
right?
faith, find faith right now. Like, how can we use the teaching? How can we use our practice, or create a practice that cultivates faith in something
Right. And
deeper in ourselves?
yeah, absolutely. Because and it's not to say like, there's that phrase of like everything happens for a reason, that can be used for spiritual bypassing. So
Yeah,
not to like think of things in that way, but to think of it has happened. So how can I find
it has happened.
the bigger picture? Right? It has happened. Instead of it's happened for a reason, it has happened.
Yeah,
What's the bigger picture? How can I be a part of the bigger picture? How can I, in my own life, not just like in a bigger setting, but also in my own life, how can I be a part of
yeah,
the bigger picture? And then how can I move, keep pushing beyond myself into my community and beyond and beyond and beyond.
yeah. I mean, I love talking about faith in yoga, because to me it's like the the part of yoga that's so often missing. I think people, if we just do physical practice, sometimes you miss out on the deeper spiritual truths that are there. And I understand not everyone wants that, which is fine, but I think it's important to acknowledge that's the basis of what yoga was created for. Like, yoga is about self-knowledge, connecting with God or divine self or whatever that is in you. And like, that's what we're doing. So I feel like it's almost, I mean, in a way, actually, isn't it? It's cultural appropriation to just do the physical practice and not acknowledge this piece. That there is this, the spiritual essence of yoga is the foundation of the teachings and what it is designed to do.
And what I think is so lovely about what you're doing, but also what opportunity has now opened up because of what's going on in the world, is that, as what you've been doing is having these conversations. These are basically Dharma talks, but in conversation, right?
Yeah,
With no
yeah,
with no one viewpoint, but like in many viewpoints, which
yeah,
is wonderful. And as many of us are maybe moving away from this studio model for the first time to teach our own classes online, like we're not necessarily bound by the studio sequencing or the studio idea that we have to put
mm,
asana first and make asana like 45 minutes of the class. And so in this new format where there's more freedom and there's more creativity allowed, how can we bring in the other parts of the practice? Because that's what people need right now. Like, yes, movement is needed, definitely, because gyms are closed and physical centers are closed, but we can offer more content and we can offer more than just the physical movement, because there isn't as
yeah.
much necessarily dictated to us, right?
Well, yeah. So you figured me out. You figured.
I love it though. I love it.
I
That's
mean,
how I would approach it too, because it's not, well, none of us have the answer. We're all seekers, right? None of us are claiming to be, maybe some of us are claiming to be enlightened, but you and I are not. We're just in the doing the work. Hopefully we are, both of us.
yeah. I
So how can
mean,
we bring that work to other people too?
yeah, I mean, it's such an opportunity. Well, going back to tapas, like if you think of that as opportunity, like it's a time for growth and learning, and that's what change offers. And
And to
challenge.
share our struggles, right? So all of us are going through different struggles. So instead of hiding them, how can we talk about them with our students in conversation, in community, just like you're doing right here with this platform? So
Yeah.
instead of saying like, oh, look at me, I've got it together, I've got this online offering, how can we say I'm struggling? I'm struggling. And so instead of I'm going to have this online asana class because I need it and I think we all do, but I'm also going to offer up a space for us to converse about what's going on, and there doesn't need to be an answer. It just needs to be a space of community, and maybe picking a teaching like we're doing here, a two or a couple that resonate.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's my dream come true, actually, is to spend my life talking about these teachings. So like for me, this has been an amazing opportunity to like have these conversations. And I've tried to focus mostly on like what's happening right now, but really this is what I'm most interested in, is like, let's look at yoga and what yoga has been showing us all along. And okay, now that we're struggling, how can we use this and engage yoga more deeply?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the Gita because once you said Gita, then my mind kind of went wild.
There's so much there.
I
There's so much there.
I don't even know where to start. But yeah, why don't you keep going and I'll come back to the Gita.
Okay. So the other thing, what some of these yamas and niyamas, I'm just gonna say that, you know, the ones that were given in the Yoga Sutras, for those who don't know, are 5 and 5 typically, and they're kind of a selection of what else is of the yamas and niyamas that are sometimes mentioned in other texts, meaning the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Hatha and the Upanishad. So there are extended versions of the yamas and niyamas. So we've been talking about some of those. And in one of the extended versions of the niyamas is this idea of huta, or rituals, ceremony, and ceremonies. And sometimes it's referred to like yagna as like the fire ceremonies that you see in Hinduism, but just any ritual, having a ritual can center us, can ground us. And this time for us, it's a recreating of the ritual. So if we're used to, it's not only recreating, but like still trying to maintain ritual. So if we're used to like getting up at a certain time, like having breakfast, you know, getting ready, going to work, but now we're at home and there's kids or whatever, or maybe we're alone and we're like, oh, who cares? Who cares what I look like? You know, we can very easily lose our routines. We can lose our rituals. So how do we sort of meld maybe what the former ritual and routine was into a way that makes sense without losing ourselves? Because that routine can be grounding, right? I know for some, you know, even my husband and I, we're working together in the space now, and it's like we're negotiating bathroom space and we're you know what I mean, kitchen time and all of those things.
Yeah.
And
I love that. I think it's still good to like get up and get dressed. And you know, if you're working from home, you still need to get dressed. And like, I mean, I know like sometimes I'll just be wearing my pajama bottoms, you know, when I'm doing these. But it's like, okay, well, at least I'm dressed. So
yeah, I had a conversation with some of my friends yesterday. They're like, oh, I feel so blah by the end of the day. And I was like, oh, I'm used to wearing yoga clothes. So for me, it's no big deal to wear comfortable clothes. But, you know, I still, I like have a tendency to not want to shower first thing in the morning. So I'd rather jump into doing my work. But now I'm like, oh no, before I do my work, let me again center joy and then shower and feel fresh and do all the things that I would normally do, instead of saying, oh, you know, forget about it, because it's so easy to fall into a routine where before you know it, you haven't showered in 2 days and you haven't eaten properly because your meal times have gone out the window and, you know, all of those things. So, but
also the routine of a spiritual practice or an asana practice, you know, in that context is essential. Like I know that, I mean, I'll reveal something about myself, which is that I actually don't like to do my practice in the morning. I actually have an afternoon practice, which like I don't usually recommend to people, but I just know the way my mind is. And I'm like you, like I need to get up and get busy in the morning. Like I have way too much energy and way too many ideas when I get out of bed. So I find like the afternoons is when I slow down and I get maybe a little more tired, and then I can actually practice. So I've been spending a lot of time each afternoon doing that. And it's been so grounding to me. I look forward to it. And I also, it's just like a routine. It's just a routine. It's like something I don't have to think about. It's just part of my day.
I wonder for you, Jeevana, when you have kids, and I wonder when they were young and something like a snow day or whatever. Not that
Yeah.
you live in California, so you probably never had a snow day, but
No, fires.
like
We had fire days.
okay, so when you have like a fire day or something out of the ordinary, were you ever able to like just get them to kind of be a part of your routine, like try and do, even if they're not doing it perfectly and they're still kind
Oh
of
yeah.
disturbing your
Are
practice?
you kidding me? My poor kids, I used to make them meditate every day. Like
There we
that
go.
was required. Of course, neither of them do it now. Like I realize
Yeah,
like as a parent,
but
like
they're in
this is,
their teens, right? Or they're young
yeah.
adults, so you never know
But
what
it's
will come
like
back
you're
around.
gonna do the opposite of what your parents want you to do. So like,
Yeah.
my grandmother did yoga. She taught me yoga when I was a small child, and that really influenced me greatly because it was like in my
Hmm.
mind. So I know like I was fine with when they said they didn't want to do it anymore. I tried to like coerce them, and then finally I gave up because at least
Hmm.
it like gave them an experience of it. They knew they got to see what I do. When they were little, they were so sweet about it. Oh my God. Like I used to love, I would meditate. Actually, those days I would try to sit in the morning before they woke up. Um, and my daughter would sit on my lap and meditate with me. That was beautiful. But that was really just for a short time, when she was that certain age. And then, yeah, I mean, kids, yeah, you have to be careful you don't push too hard on, forcing.
Hmm.
I don't think forcing these things on children is necessary. If it's fun, then it's good. And my daughter liked it. We had, actually, I saw Harris Lender was watching, I saw before, and she created Kidding Around Yoga, and we used to use her music. And my daughter would love to like dance around to those songs. Like you do some asanas and you play, and there's some meditation tips for kids. Like fun is good.
Yeah,
And
to make
fun
it
is good.
fun.
Fun is good for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. We all need the fun. We all need the fun.
Okay, give
Um,
me one more. I want to hear, we don't have a lot more time. So just do you have one
okay.
more? And I want to,
I really like this phrase, and I would not to take it literally, but okay, again, from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Yoga is destroyed by the following six causes. Oh no, the thing just refreshed. I gotta find it again. Okay, here it is. Sorry, Google Docs where I had it all laid out nicely. Yoga is destroyed by the following six causes: overeating, exertion, talkativeness, adhering to rules, like rules around food or ritual, um,
hmm.
company. Sorry, it refreshed. What's going on? Company of men, and I'm going to say company of people, I think,
Uh-huh.
and unsteadiness. I think that's what it's getting at, is company of people. And so, and because there is a whole thing about like the company you should keep should be like good people, et cetera, right?
Mhm.
And so I thought those were some good um, things for us to reflect on during this time, because what the overeating thing is interesting because I think for many of us, our diet may be changing and it may not necessarily be reflecting our needs necessarily, our changing needs. So for me, I'll speak to myself, but I also know that there is like, I'm coming from a place of privilege in that like I'm looking to eat more junk food lately because I'm sitting around at home more. Do you know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? And I'm
Mhm.
like, this isn't really meeting my needs. So I'm having to be like, okay, you don't actually need to eat those chips right now. And not
Mhm.
that there's anything wrong with it, but I'm like, just is that going to make me feel good? Is that going to nourish me? Um, and maybe it is, but I've been doing a little bit more than I need to. So for me, I'm like reflecting on, is that
Yeah,
nourishing for me in this moment? And it's like gotten to the point of like, okay, now you're just eating out of boredom. So
that's true.
um
There's a lot of
yeah,
boredom now. But also there's the
yeah,
other side of it, which is like being home. We're cooking every meal basically, and that's awesome. Like
yeah,
I love that. I love cooking and
yeah,
mostly I like eating, but I like to cook. I like eating food that we cook. So that feels
yeah.
like the opposite opportunity for me, like being more
More
connected to my
nourished.
food. Yeah.
And then the other, I would say the opposite would be like undernourishing, right? Like not having the access to the foods that we need that are nourishing. And, I'm lucky to not have to be in that position, but I know so many of us are. And so I've been thinking about like, how can I help support that situation and what are the things we can do? Again,
Hmm.
it comes down to systemic things too, like politically, advocating as much as we can to our representatives to like make sure that the people who need the access are going to get the access.
Yes.
So yeah, I think in that way, like we can think about like our changing needs, our changing situation, our changing amount of exertion, and how are we meeting those needs, and are we being mindful? So I don't think it's
Exactly.
about like, yeah, it's not no shame, but just can we recalibrate to our new circumstances?
Yeah. So I guess for me, I mean, just we covered a lot of ground, but I think I feel like there's some themes for me. Like one is like the using, I don't want to say using, engaging the yoga practices in a way that supports a new reality. Like for many of us in the immediate future, which is that our lives are changed for many people, because we may not be able to work, we might have to be at home right now. We might be sick, or we have loved ones who are sick. So I feel like there's a lot of changes happening right now. But also, the teachings can offer us the ability to be reflective, to look at ourselves clearly, to look at our reactions to things. We can try to work on contentment and build faith by connecting through spiritual practice with ourself, with our true self or spiritual side, right? Seems
Yeah.
like those are the themes that I'm hearing. I don't know if you have other.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was actually thinking the word non-reactive when you said
Mhm.
our reactions. And that's
Mhm.
exactly like you just summarized it so beautifully, but just in that one word of like non-reactivity. Because first, I feel like many of us are like eyes glued to the news, which is I can understand the impulse. Like I not because I'm saying that from my own place of like I'm constantly like wanting to be like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? But for us, like what I've been trying to do in my life is set boundaries around like when I look at things so that I don't constantly have that reactivity to every little thing that's happening.
Right.
And
Because,
understanding like if your job is to look at the news, you may
yeah,
not have that option. But if your
yeah,
job doesn't require you to look at the news
yeah,
constantly, can we try to limit like, okay, I'm going to look at it in the morning and then I'm going to look at it once at night, but I'm not going to like try to look at it every minute or every 10 minutes or whatever it is, or every hour on
right,
the hour. So that we can calm those mental disturbances that come from like new information.
right. And the reason we want to do that is actually because not only do we become happier ourselves, hopefully we have more contentment ourselves, but actually then we can bring that to the people around us, whether it's the people that we're in isolation with or in quarantine with, which is important that we really work on
Yeah.
those relationships right now, because they are going to get intense. Like a few more weeks of this, it's like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time together. But also that's how we become a serviceful, how we offer service to the world, is when we've got our act together and
Yeah.
we're not looking to get our needs met from others. Like that allows us to be of service to them. Like we're content, and then we can offer more to the world.
And then I would even add the circumstances of being alone and being in self quarantine or in shelter in place, right?
That's
Like
true. I
looking
know.
at, yeah, I know for us, we're with other people, but in the
Yeah.
perspective of like, if you're alone and then because you may be, trying. I feel like if you're alone, if I'm alone, I'll just say I don't like to speak for other people, but if I'm alone, my tendency is to look at my devices more and to look at the news more and things like that. But that only drives more of that anxiety feeling or that feeling of anxiousness, right? Which isn't a great state to be in mentally when you're alone, because it
No.
only like compounds with loneliness. It only compounds with if you have a tendency towards like feeling low, or I don't want to use the word depression because that feels clinical, but just like the idea of
Yeah.
non-clinical depression, because I don't know about clinical depression, so I don't want to speak on behalf
Yeah.
of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, just to be aware that like even in the situation where we are alone, like how can we limit our disturbances from the outside world,
Right.
and then only take it, not only take in, but at least like make time to take in good things, or to stay with just ourselves, like, and become mentally clear, to work on that clarity, so that when we do engage, when we do go online to hopefully talk to our friends and etc., we're coming from a place of clarity,
Right.
you know?
Through that inner knowing, like how much is too
Yeah.
much, when to put it down. And actually going back to, I think that's so important what you said. I assume people are with others, although, you know, if you're isolated and alone, that can have different challenges. But I think you can still be of service. So like we can still be of service to the world when we're alone. And that's so clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, through all the work that we're still doing, the ways we reach out, the messages we write to people, the calls we make, the writing we do, like we can really serve the world from our own
Absolutely.
homes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was on a call earlier today with Nick Demos, who's a teacher, friend, mentor of mine, and he said that he didn't like the word social distancing because he said that he preferred to think of it as physical distancing because we're still engaging socially.
Yeah.
So just to think of like if we are physically distancing, but we can still engage, we can still do things, we can still have an impact on others because it isn't just, we're not cutting ourselves off socially. The
Right.
social issues still exist, and so therefore we can have an impact socially.
So do you have any other messages? It's been an hour, so we should probably end. Do you have any other thoughts?
We can end it there. I think we covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. I hope this is really useful and like thought-provoking for people who are joining us. If people have questions, I'd love to hear them so we could follow up at some point.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like specific things.
Yeah,
And we'll
thank you. I just
continue
want
to
to thank
share.
you for your sharing, you know, and especially I love how, you know, different sources, you know, it's really fun to hear different people talk about yoga philosophy because everyone has like their own take on different things and different teachings that are meaningful to them. So thank you so much. And
Yeah,
good luck
absolutely.
with your quarantine and
You too. Stay
okay.
safe.
Oh,
Stay
you know,
healthy.
we were gonna do a meditation, but maybe I could lead we could just do Loka Samasta, maybe. Could we do that chant? You know that means
Absolutely. You
may
lead
all
and
be.
I'll follow.
Yeah, we could this chant, this mantra means may all beings everywhere be at peace. We could say it 3 times together.
Okay.
So let's take a moment, close the eyes if you like. Take a breath. Loka Samasta
Sukhino Bhavantu.
Loka Samasta
Samasta
Sukhino
Sukhino Bhavantu.
Loka Samasta
Samasta
Sukhino.
Sukhino Bhavantu.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Bye.
Thanks for having me.